Just because music is difficult doesn't mean that it can't move you in a profound way. Well, hi there everyone, it's me, Penny. Welcome back to my channel. I have a new ring light. Hopefully the lighting is better. In this video, I'm going to talk about something that is quite important. Now, you know that I love the music of Johann Sebastian Bach. Alas, many people find this music dry, and in some cases without passion or emotion. Sometimes I view some of the other videos on YouTube about Bach's music and I read the comments. Sometimes you see this kind of comment, Bach's music is so dry. I've heard it on a number of occasions and it always kind of makes me feel rather sad. Who am I to tell someone they are wrong when they say Bach's music is dry? If they feel it's dry, then it's dry to them, and that's perfectly fine. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. So I thought in this video we're going to go out into the backyard because I have this little pop-up tent, and I thought it would be fun to set it up in the back and share with you some of the research that I've done just going about the books I have here at home. I went through them to try to find some quotes from great pianists of the past who have written about Bach's music and why it is so special to them. I just, I just love this music and I can't help but try to share that passion. So anyhow, let's take a jaunt out to the backyard. Alright, so here we are in my little pop-up tent in my backyard, and it is cooler than in the house. So this is the place to be on a hot summer day. Now, I've talked on my channel before about my love for the music of Bach, why I love his music, and in a nutshell, it allows me a form of escapism. But also I find his music extremely intimate. At least the keyboard, the solo keyboard works. The B minor Mass is not intimate music. The other thing too about this music is that because it's contrapuntal, it's made up of many voices, and with all these horizontal lines of music, stay put, Mr. B. There's so much for the ear to listen for, and it tickles the ear to hear this music. So that, the escapism, the intimacy, and the rational quality of this music, it just seems to be without ego. It seems to be searching for the transcendental. It's music of the cosmos, as I've said before. It's so saturated by beautiful musical patterns and shapes. And when you think about architecture and Frank Lloyd Wright in particular, or some of the motifs in Art Nouveau glass and figurines and Art Deco, these kinds of beautiful visual shapes and geometric patterns and things, all of that I hear in Bach's music, and it never seems to lose its head. It never seems to become wild and out of control. It's extremely intense, but it's controlled, rational, aesthetic beauty that's searching for a transcendentalism beyond this planet of Earth, seeking answers and a sort of an appreciation for science, and all in an intimate soundscape that I can control with my very own two hands. My reasons are not enough to convince everyone to love Bach's music, and so I went through some of my books to find out what the great masters had to say. So let's go through them. Mr. B, we're gonna move you back there, and this first one, this is the Piano Playing with Piano Questions Answered by Joseph Hoffman. He was a pianist from the Golden Age, wonderful pianist. And this book is a collection of his writings, the articles that he published for the Ladies' Home Journal back in the early 1900s. And he answered people's questions. Every day people would send him questions, how high should my piano bench be? And actually at the back of the book, there's an index to the questions themselves. But there's all sorts of issues he talks about, and one of the people who wrote into the Ladies' Home Journal was commenting about Bach's music being dry. And Joseph Hoffman wrote that some of Bach's music seems dry to you may be due to your mental attitude by which you possibly expect from ecclesiastical music what only the opera can give you. Think yourself into his style, and you will find a mine of never dreamed of enjoyment. And Bach never wrote operas. He was quite old-fashioned. The music that he was writing at the end of his life, when operas were becoming all the rage. And he did write a lot of church music, for sure. The music I play is not ecclesiastical, it's not sacred music. And even if it were, that would not be in my mind. But it's just such rational music. And but I think for a lot of people, it could be that severity of, oh, this is religious music. This is I can't just let my hair down and undo my top button and relax. No, I have to be all strict. But no, it's not. You don't have to be like that at all. So I thought that was a good quote. And then I was going through the Harriet Brower interviews, and she interviewed a number of great pianists long ago. And one of those pianists, Wanda Landowska, who was known for her playing of the music of Bach, and I just love what she has to say. She writes, "Do not think that because this music is very learned, it must therefore be without feeling. Follow carefully the themes in each hand, and you will see how it all sings. Then listen with all your heart. Do not be afraid of the grave manner and big wig of Father Bach. Draw near in thought, and let us group ourselves about him. You will feel the love, the generous goodness, which fills every phrase of his lovely music. They will unite us by strong and warm ties, and enkindle what is good and human within us." So, just because music is difficult to listen to doesn't mean that it can't move you in a profound way. But it requires its own kind of a mindset. And oh, the places it will take you. I then ventured over to the Paderewski memoirs. I wrote my dissertation on Ignacy Paderewski. He was the Polish pianist and Prime Minister of Poland during the First World War. And I was fascinated by his style of playing. In some ways I tried to evoke it in my own playing, which in many ways is obviously quite different from his playing. But the tone and the way that he pedals and uses the finger in overlapping. We've got some wind here. This has all left a deep impression on me. He writes about Bach, and he says, "Bach is a word that I would gladly proclaim to all the world. Every pianist should play Bach. Without studying Bach, he would really be no pianist at all, particularly on account of Bach's supreme polyphonic style, which contributes enormously to the technical development of the pianistic art. The pianistic art is a great art because it combines the beauty of ideas with that polyphonic mastership of which Bach was the supreme exponent. He is, for me, a kind of divinity in music." musically speaking, Bach is a universal genius. Bach is a giant. My next one is a little bit of a different kind of reminiscence here, and this one comes from Abram Chasen's book on Leopold Stokowski. It's a biography on the great conductor Stokowski, who had all that hair and that charisma on stage, and transcribed some of Bach's music, and was a real pioneer in embracing technology and what it could do for classical music. I think one of his claims to fame was his involvement with the Walt Disney film Fantasia, which showcases a lot of classical music, and Stokowski was conducting this music. Now, Abram Chasens, the author of this book, was good friends with Stokowski. Incidentally, he was the husband of my piano teacher, and while I did not know him, I was very close with my piano teacher, Constance Keene, and so there's a link there, and I think that perhaps gets me a little bit more excited, perhaps than most people. But I mean, Fantasia was a big film, a very costly endeavor, and in the book he talks about how in 1938 there was a story conference for the creation of Fantasia, and Stokowski was there with Walt Disney, and he was trying to convince them to use the toccata and fugue in D minor by Mr. B for this movie. And I just love this whole account of the process, because as David Raksin wrote in the book, David Raksin was a wonderful film composer from those old movies, and he said Walt Disney was scared to death by the very name of Bach. There's a lot of people who are scared of this music. Walt Disney was scared of Bach's music. So, Stokey, as Stokowski was nicknamed, was in the double role of teacher and salesman. He had to kind of charm the filmmaker to this music of Bach, while not sort of, letting them know how much you don't know as a non-musician. So Stokowski was not talking to musicians. He had to explain the work to people who couldn't really understand. And then Chasens writes, when Disney asks, what does the toccata and fugue represent? Stokowski answered, it is a motif, or decorative pattern, which gradually develops more and more. Finally, it becomes perfectly free. Notice these are not musical words. He was very smart. He was selling Disney on Bach's music. I just love that. And of course, the music got used in the film. Stokowski continues to Disney, the theme, which comes at the beginning, develops more and more, with more and more voices and instruments. It is a growth, like a tree growing from a seed. Disney then suggests, we might use Stokowski's face. Let the lighting effect and color change as the music changes. I feel that there is a theme in the background in the music there, with something into the foreground and covering it up, whereupon Stokowski says, that is counterpoint. And David Raksin says, of course Stokey had a lot of malarkey in him, and he knew that a musician of his caliber had to do a certain amount of hocus pocus in order to maintain his stature and power. Well, they were teaching that at music school, the hocus pocus of being a musician. Just kind of, you either have it or you don't, I guess. And if he tried to tell them about the nuts and bolts of music, they'd run out on him. But if he maintained his magnificence, wore impeccable white tie and tails, and fluffed his hair and all the rest of that jazz, it would do wonders for the budget. And this is my favorite part. Abram Chason says, Stokoe was trying to convince Disney and his staff that they could use Bach's Toccata and Fugue, and that if it were compelling and colorful enough, it would be acceptable even to those who would ordinarily reject it. I feel Bach applauding Stokowski here. Thank you. And Stokowski was right. He was supremely right, and he did a tremendous service to music. It's true. There wasn't another conductor in the world who could have sold this artistic and expensive package to the only people in the world who could materialize and market it. Thank you, Stokowski. Speaking of Stokowski, that's a nice segue to the next book I poked through for some words of why Bach's music is great. And I went to my Glenn Gould selected letters. Some of you know that I've been deeply influenced by Glenn Gould, not so much by his playing, but by his philosophy in general. This has influenced me tremendously, and that might be a subject for another video, how I came to be interested in Glenn Gould. And his work to me is like an onion. You just, the first layer is almost more than you can handle, and then you find that there's another layer and another layer. And so rich in ideas and thoughtfulness. And as I was going through all of these and other books too, and feeling very stimulated by the content, when I then pulled this out and went through it, it felt like, I'm home. It's familiar. So I have a thing for Glenn, and I flipped through these letters. I mean, I've got a lot of his writings in the house, but I thought I would try something different with the letters. And there was one, because we know Bach was Glenn Gould's favorite composer, and because Gould loved contrapuntal music, and Bach was the master of that. But he gets at some other things too. I mean, a lot of what I've been influenced by in Bach's music, I think, is what influenced Glenn as well. This idea of searching for order and music of the cosmos, this transcendental escapism, and it's very rational music. But Glenn mentions another aspect in this letter from January 3rd, 1963. It's talking about the archaic in Bach, and I think one of the things Gould most adored about Bach was that Bach was a nonconformist, and so was Gould. He resisted the trends of his day. He was not writing operas and very homophonic pieces. He was looking back and doing what he wanted, bucking the trend, you know? So that's another reason to love Bach's music. But as Glenn says in this letter, 1963, from time to time, I have given lectures on subjects relating to Bach and his period, sometimes concerning such matters as the archaic in Bach, the sense of what I suppose could be called historical retrogression. In other words, the defiance of chronology that was implicit in his own development through the fact that towards the end of his life, he was completely disinterested in the new music of his day and withdrew into that glorious contrapuntal reflection of past ages, as in The Art of Fugue, Bach's last work. That's significant. I mean, Bach was, he had a lot of mouths to feed, certainly. He understood a little bit about money, I'm sure, and was up against some pressure in various of his roles by his employers. But music needed to communicate something. It was more than just what's gonna sell, you know. And even if it meant resisting the trends and being considered out of date and old-fashioned and thorny, then he was okay with that. And I love that quality too, certainly. So I have just a little bit more here, two more books to reference. And this one again comes from the Harriet Brower interviews, the interview she did with Alexander Zeloty, who was a great pianist of the Golden Age and a student of Franz Liszt. And this is just a short quote from him. He talks about how his teacher, Franz Liszt, the great composer, Franz Liszt, loved the music of Bach and taught us all to love it with him. Zeloty says, "I am still a student of this great music, for I do not yet know all of it by any means. I am only beginning to realize and feel its deep inner meaning." We know too that Frédéric Chopin, one of the greatest composers for piano of all time, knew intimately the 48 preludes and fugues of Bach. He played them, he memorized them, and he took the sheet music with him on his travels. And that brings me to what I saved for the last, the best for the last, which is from Arthur Schnabel's book, My Life and Music. Arthur Schnabel was another pianist from the Golden Age, very fine pianist, student of Theodore Leschetizky, but he didn't really represent the romantic pianist. I mean, even just looking at him, I mean, he had very short, close-cropped hair, wore a business suit, not unlike Paderewski with his wild red flowing hair and the silk scarves and top hats and all very guzzied up. But Schnabel was more the kind of maybe the thinking pianist in the literal sense, a little bit more studious and serious kind of persona. And he was known for playing the music of Beethoven in particular. But there's some wonderful things that he says in this book about Bach's music. And one of them is, you see, one of the greatest attractions in interpreting Bach's music is that you have the choice. And he's speaking here of Bach's scores. They don't have dynamic markings or articulation markings. Doesn't tell you where to play legato or staccato, where to play forte or pianissimo. You get to choose that. It takes quite an effort, he says, to recognize Bach's piece in the Busoni transcription of the Chaconne. You know, many composers have transcribed Bach's music into a more romantic, virtuosic mold. Busoni, Ferruccio Busoni, was particularly known for that, and Schnabel says that this music sounds like César Franck, another romantic composer. It acquires a kind of sensuousness, impurity, or bombast, which seems to me absolutely foreign to Bach's essential qualities. There were two ideas, he says, to approach Bach either as a cathedral or as an ink pot. But Bach was a human being, Schnabel says, who loved to wander in the woods and sing and hear the birds just like other people. He says, I hesitate to play Bach in public because the halls, the concert halls, are too big for much of his more intimate piano music. For instance, the incomparable Well-Tempered Clavier. So the intimacy of Bach's piano music for Schnabel was one of the attractive qualities. I want to finish with one more quote from Arthur Schnabel's book, and this, I've hit on it before, but this is gold. And he is speaking in particular of the Well-Tempered Clavier, Preludes and Fugues, and he says, in the performance of music, if one uses the piano, one can actually play all the music composed for performance and can be alone. Listen to this. I am inclined to assume that the Well-Tempered Clavier was meant by Johann Sebastian to be heard just by the one person who plays it. I think Bach's music expresses the cosmos. That is Arthur Schnabel's view on Bach, and I'm going to leave that there. So I hope this was a nice change of scenery for you. Goodness knows I love pop music. I appreciate all musical styles, and Bach does come more easily to me than other music, for sure. And the fact that Bach's music is contrapuntal, made up of multiple parts or voices, suggests that they're all equal, and it's a good way of life. I feel like if we can live the way Bach's music is, in a contrapuntal way, where we actually listen to what our neighbor says, and we give everyone an opportunity to be heard, and not just listen to the soloist, the melody, and everyone else's accompaniment. The privileged people on the top are the melody who we listen to, and everyone else is shushed in the background. No. In Bach's music, the voices are equal. They all participate. My teacher, Constance Keene, used to say, Bach's music is a conversation. It's not a monologue. And that is a way of life. That is a human, thoughtful way to live. And it's also very beautiful to listen to. I think that just about sums up everything I have to say for now. Thank you for watching, and I will be back again soon for some more talking about this music, some teaching tips perhaps, and performances, and I've got a few ideas cooking in the old noggin. So until next time, be well and happy practicing. Bye-bye.